As we talk about physical development of teenagers, much of this information that we'll be talking about comes from Laura Burke's 2018 Exploring Lifespan Development book. In terms of motor development, teens continue to develop their large muscle skills, although how they develop is different for boys and girls. Girls tend to gradually keep getting better at large muscle skills throughout the school age years and into early adolescence, with their increases beginning to level off at around age 14. Boys have a big increase in strength, speed, and endurance throughout the teenage years. Engaging in sports helps children and teenagers to increase their motor development. As they engage in sports and exercise, they learn a number of things, including teamwork, problem solving, assertiveness, and how to be competitive. And their cognitive and social development are also enhanced. Regular physical activity, whether it's from sports involvement, engaging in family physical exercise, or gym class at school, is associated with better physical and mental health and finding pleasure in engaging in physical activity. In the current US climate, with a decreased emphasis on gym class at school, there's been a big decrease in the amount of physical activity that kids engage in from ages 9 to 17, with fewer and fewer girls and boys engaging in physical exercise. Boys are more likely to engage in physical exercise than girls through the teen years. Now, as we think about sexual maturation and puberty, teenagers' bodies are changing quickly. The sexual maturation of their bodies, which is called puberty, typically takes about 4 years to complete, even though some teenagers' bodies do all the puberty activities in 2 years, and other teen bodies might take up to 5 or 6 years. There seems to be a predictable sequence of sexual maturation for boys and girls across the world, even though the age at which it happens varies based on where children grow up. So first let's think about puberty in girls. Typically, we don't see girls who are able to have a baby until their bodies are an okay size for childbearing. When girls are approaching puberty, the pituitary gland in the brain begins to release special hormones that target the ovaries to get their bodies ready to have a baby. The ovaries hold girls' eggs, and they're born with all the eggs that they'll ever have. The sequence of sexual maturation for girls tends to be the following. First, breast budding, where there's a slight swelling below the nipple. Then the height spurt begins. Pubic and body hair starts growing in lightly. We see a peak and strength, like a spurt where girls get stronger, as well as a peak in the height spurt. Then the first period that a girl has, a peak weight spurt. Then girls tend to reach their adult height, their pubic hair fully grows in, and then the last thing is that the breast growth is finished. For girls, puberty usually begins when they have a growth spurt and their breasts begin to bud. This can happen anytime between age 8 to 13, with an average age of 10. And this is followed by light pubic hair anywhere from age 8 to 14, with an average age of 10 and a half. Girls then have the peak of their strength and height spurt, with the strength spurt occurring at an average age of 11.6 and ranging anywhere from 9.5 years to age 14. And then the height increase starts at an average age of 11.7 years and ranges from 10 to 13 and a half years of age. Girls reach menarche, which is when they have their first menstruation or period, at around age 12 and a half, although that time can range from age 10.5 to 15.5. Girls experience their peak weight spurt at around 12.7 years with a range of 10 to 14. They reach their adult height by an average age 13, with a range between 10 to 16. Their pubic hair will be darker and at the adult level by around age 14 and a half. And again, there's a range. This time it's a smaller range between 14 to 15 years of age. Their breast growth will be finished by an average age of 15, even though that can actually happen anytime between ages 10 and 17. Now, as we think about sexual maturation for boys, the sequence of sexual maturation for boys tends to be having the testes begin to get bigger, having pubic hair come in lightly, the penis begins to get bigger, the height spurt begins, the first ejaculation happens, and then comes the peak height and weight spurt. Facial hair begins to grow, their voices deepen, the penis and testes growth is finished. Then they have their peak strength spurt. They reach their adult height and their pubic hair is fully grown in. So again, for boys, the first sign of puberty is that their testes, which are egg-shaped glands in the scrotum, that sac below the penis, begin to get bigger. The testes are where sperm is made. This can happen at any time between ages 9.5 to 13.5, with an average age of 11.5 years. This is followed by light pubic hair anywhere from age 10 to 15, with an average age of 12. Boys' penises begin to get bigger anywhere between the ages of 10.5 and 14.5, with an average age of 12. Boys then begin to get their height spurt anywhere between the ages of 10.5 to 16 and an average age of 12.5. They then have what's called spermarche, which is their first ejaculation, anytime between ages 12 and 16, with an average age of 13.5. Semen, the fluid that covers or that carries sperm, is produced by the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles. Boys then have the peak of their weight and height spurt occurring at an average age of 14 and ranging from 12.5 years to age 15.5 years. Their facial and body hair begin to grow and their voice begins to deepen due to the lengthening of the vocal cords and then also the size increase of the larynx at around age 14, even though that time can range from age 12.5 to 15.5. Their penis and testes growth is typically finished at an average age of 14.5, with a range of 12.5 to 16 years. Boys experience their peak strength spurt around age 15.3, with a range of 13 years to 17 years. They reach their adult height by an average age of 15.5, with a range between 13.5 to 17.5. Their pubic hair will be darker and at the adult level by around age 15.5, with a range anywhere between 14 and 17. Now, when puberty happens for boys and girls is influenced by the genes they get from their parents, as well as nutrition, exercise, their early relationships with their parents, and environmental exposures to toxins also plays a role. When girls have a big increase in body weight and fat, they might begin puberty earlier, and girls who are overweight tend to begin puberty earlier. Girls with low levels of body fat, often through maybe athletic training or maybe also through limiting their food intake, often begin puberty later. African American girls tend to begin puberty earlier because they're ahead of Caucasian girls in terms of their physical development. So just like girls tend to be ahead of boys, different ethnicities might reach puberty at a different age. Parents who use harsh parenting tend to have kids who begin puberty earlier. During puberty, teens' brains also regulate sleep differently. Might be because the neurons in their brain are more sensitive to evening light. This is what the evidence is looking like. Teens start to secrete melatonin later in the evening than children do or than adults do, which impacts when they get tired. And of course, they have all sorts of temptations as well, including social and school activities with friends, media use, homework, and then just wanting to stay up later than their parents for their own independence. Almost all girls get information about menstruation from their moms. Boys tend to get information about puberty from websites or things they've read. Typically, almost all girls tell a friend that they've begun their periods, while fewer boys tell anybody about their first ejaculation. Really, boys tend to get less social support around all the changes they undergo in their teen years than girls do. In many cultures, there are rituals to celebrate puberty. For example, historically, the quinceañera celebrates a 15-year-old girl's sexual maturity and readiness for marriage. In the US, there's not a recognized celebration around puberty, although several events do occur during the teen years that are meaningful for teens, like being able to get a job, to drive, graduating from high school, being able to vote, and eventually, potentially, being able to drink. Now let's think about dating for a second. The physical and hormonal changes that happen during puberty make teens more interested in the opposite sex. But when a person starts dating depends on one's culture. In the US and other Western countries, we might start engaging in these relationships as young as 12 or 13. Other cultures wait till much later. Having uninvolved parents or aggressive family or peer relationships increases one's risk of experiencing dating violence. Many LGBTQ youth have a hard time finding a partner because their peers may not have come out yet. Relationships for LGBTQ youth tend to be more positive when they have closer relationships with their parents and friends. And even though most teen dating relationships tend to end toward the end of high school years, when the relationships are positive, they still support teens' ongoing relationship development.